and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of March 10th, 2014. Welcome to the site, to you new members, and welcome back to the old members. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video. We're gonna go on. We can't stop. A video just like this one, but I need your questions if I'm going to answer them, of course, so please send them to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. There is no such thing as a stupid question, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. And speaking of questions, we have March Madness going on right now, which means that the member that submits the most number of Ask Videomail questions in the month of March receives a lifetime membership to kennyroy.com. Now, I am sorry to report the number to beat is 2. 2. If you submit 3 questions right now, you will be in the lead. You will win a lifetime membership to kennyroy.com. Think about that. Just think about that for a second. $29 a month. And I don't know how long I might disappear on in a crazy bison accident in 4 years, but ostensibly a lifetime membership is worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and the number to beat is 2. What's going on, guys? Come on, seriously. I mean, honestly, especially the people who are in the Anim gym. I mean, you guys are really showing some effort and some energy putting into your workflow right now. So. Organizing your thoughts, turning it into an Ask Videomail question, I mean, that's a serious undertaking. So anyway, please take advantage of this contest. I really want to see someone win it who puts a lot of effort into it. But right now, the number to beat is 2. Come on. You can do better than that, guys. A couple people have 2, by the way. There's like 3 people who have 2. But that, I mean, if I was a contestant in this, I would be, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 by now, probably. I'd probably make a goal of sending 1 question to me a day. That's what I would make a goal of, and say, like, all right, if I can't think of more than 30 in a month, then whoever could think of more than 30, they probably deserve it. That's what I would do. Anyway, but the contest will go on, and the person who has the most, even if it's like 4, they'll win. So I hope it's you. And if there's a tie, I'll figure out some sort of fun tiebreaker that we'll do. So that is with the questions. Remember to send them in, because the Ask Videomails are user-driven. They are questions that you guys submit. They are not my questions. I want to know what you guys are thinking about. So speaking of which, let's check out this week's. That is a great question. So basically what that animator is pointing out is that with the shots turning out so similar in this month's Anim Gym, with a sneeze, how do we kind of distinguish ourselves, I guess, is the best thing. And also, how do we know that we're getting the right practice? And what kind of rig should we choose? Well, to answer that, I think what I would say is you want to always start with, if you can, to try to predict what a shot is going to teach you. So let me go back to the very first Anim Gym, and I think I spoke about this with every single one of the entries in the first Anim Gym, which was November or October. I can't remember. But it was that every shot is kind of put on earth to teach you something. And I pointed out in the critiques, like, hey, look at this, look at what you've done here, and see how when you got to this part of either the shot or your workflow, you got tripped up, or it looks like it wasn't as open to editing, it looks like it wasn't as successful to your process, whatever the case may be. And then I say, that's what this shot was kind of put on earth to teach you. Okay? So you could kind of predict that for the sneeze Anim Gym. Couldn't you? At the end of the day, couldn't you kind of like look ahead and say, is it really going to be the dynamic, like the pose change from to that, from the sniffly, nasally, sucking face to the blowing face? Is that really what's going to be advantageous to learn? Maybe. You could probably tell by the way that I just delivered that right now that I don't think it is. But maybe it is for you. Maybe your body mechanics and your physical performance, your full body head-to-toe posing is fantastic, and you've got timing down pat. And the last thing that you need to really actually just work on, solely is just facial pose changes. Maybe that's the case. If that is the case, then I would say, okay, yeah, pick a one with a face rig. Now, that doesn't necessarily go for every single shot until you have body mechanics down and you are, a fantastic head-to-toe poser. That's not what that means. So, you're not barred from taking on like facial animation shots until that is the case by any stretch of the imagination. But specifically when you have a shot that you want to tackle and you want to use for the sole purpose of improving yourself, and then maybe if it turns out fantastic, you can polish it up, give it another pass, and throw it on the reel. Definitely pare down your options based on what you want to learn from the shot. So looking ahead to the sneeze shot, it should have been pretty obvious that what you were looking for was a very clear and high energy body pose change from the moment of anticipation, and not just anticipation, not just anticipation in the animation sense, but anticipation of like the person knows a sneeze is coming, right, and telegraphing that to the audience through the body, and the moment after the sneeze. And the sneeze itself, that high energy action being the transition between those two poses. Okay? So let's take one step backwards. Opening a jar. That's the Anim Gym for January. Okay? Opening a jar. Looking ahead to that, what would opening a jar, what is it most likely going to teach you? If I remember correctly from the animations, the opening the jar, a lot of them did not have the tension through the body. It didn't look like the character was struggling with the jar because there was zero tension in the body. It was either there was nothing like pulling against another part of the body. It wasn't like there was no control. I'm sorry, that's kind of mean to say. There was a what was left to be worked on was that sort of like tension in the silhouette, like that silhouette like slowly growing, but with sort of almost like frenetic kind of control, micro movements on top of an overall kind of pose choice. That contrast and texture within the pose, all those things. Going back again, dropping a box. I picked that one because what I wanted everyone to do is kind of animate the other half of those shots that we've all animated, which is lifting a heavy box. But what happens when you drop a heavy box? Okay, what happens when that box is let off of your frame and your frame is relieved of all that weight? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Well, lo and behold, most of the shots could have used a little bit more of the recovery in the body. And what does that really mean? It means when the body is no longer struggling against weight that's pushing downwards, right? That release has almost a shuddering effect of energy through the body. And there was a lot of great work in there, but at the same time, you could have probably predicted beforehand that was going to be the problem. Jumping rope was before that. What is jumping rope? And I'm going through them one by one because not just for the people who entered the Anim Gym, but for all the people who didn't enter the Anim Gym who want to go back and watch the webcast that we did. I wanted to kind of like show you that there is probably something within these shots that you could predict would be taught to you. that the shot would kind of like mess you up until you really, really, really got that thing right? Jumping rope. What's the thing about jumping rope that is kind of difficult, that's kind of tricky? To me, it's the idea of getting the character to look not just like their legs are growing and shrinking and that their hips are reacting, but that the hips are actually being pushed off the ground, and that at a certain point there's enough inertia in the hips, in the center of gravity, that it pulls the legs off the ground and then they return to earth. If I remember correctly, again, there was some that felt like it was like the legs kind of like growing and shrinking, and the hips were kind of on an elevator ride. Not really that handoff between pushing off with the legs and then the hips just bringing the legs off the ground, and then the legs landing and then pushing off again. Okay, it's a very delicate balance, and the distance, the amount of overlap between, offset basically between the center of gravity and the feet, all of those things play a pivotal role in our extremely affect extremely how successful you are at that balance. Okay. In October, we had flipping an egg. What was the thing about flipping an egg that we learned there? Maybe I'll leave the next two for you to do in your head. October was flipping an egg. September, wow, we started early. September was putting on a hat. So if you didn't enter the Anim Gym, or if you did enter the Anim Gym, think back on those topics and try to predict for yourself, what is this shot going to teach me? If you did enter the Anim Gym, just do yourself a favor right now, go through all the entries that you've done, and remember, what was this shot put on earth to teach me? And what have I done since then? And what have I integrated from my experience on this shot into my workflow that has made me a better animator already? And if it's nothing, come on, it's workflow, guys. Come on. How many more times do I have to say it? Honestly, no, seriously. And if you haven't entered the Anim Gym, maybe think about what entries you would make for all of those topics now. If you did have the time, or you were going to enter the Anim Gym and those were the topics now, what would you make? And what would your shot, the one that you're planning in your head, what would it teach you? All right, so to take it all the way back to the original question, what kind of rig should you choose? You should choose a rig that has no more controls, that if left untouched, it's going to subtract from the shot. Okay? So putting on a hat, probably you do need a facial rig. Why? Because there is something that is kind of you can't get away from when you are doing something that has to do with the head and face. So if you just have like a stoic face and you just put the hat on, and there's not at least a little bit of a, what was that face? It's just, kind of happy-go-lucky kind of guy, or like an angry kind of guy, that can support your choices. Whenever you're doing something just kind of in the mask, you got to have a little bit there. So I would say probably a facial rig is important for that one. Okay? But, for instance, flipping an egg, absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, it might be a challenge that you want to put on yourself to make it so that it's super clear what you're trying to do. If he misses the egg, if he's really pissed about it, or he was expecting to miss the egg, or this is a chef exam and it's the only egg that they ever really had to flip perfectly in their life, and how nervous they are about the whole thing. If you can get that across in just the head-to-toe posing without a facial rig, and kind of get that nervousness going on, that shaking, whatever it is, whatever your performance choice is for that, that's a fantastic challenge. And then that becomes what the shot is put on earth to teach you. So a rule of thumb is don't choose a rig that has controls that, if left untouched, are going to distract from the animation. And in the same vein, choose a rig that is the simplest that you can get your story across. And the simpler, the more challenging. Ergo, not the worst, just the more challenging. Ergo, if you are really looking for some serious performance practice, then you want to choose a rig that is very, very bare bones. Okay, so I appreciate that question, and I know I'm harping a little bit on the Anim Gym. I do believe that it's a fantastic resource for you guys to take advantage, not just because I give a critique at the end of the month, but because there are people in the forums right now doing the same animation. That's an unbelievable, it's a huge resource. It's almost as, I never had that. I'm not sure if you guys but I was completely self-taught, and it took me 5-6 years from when I first kind of knew I wanted to do animation. I started teaching myself before I got my first job, and my first job was not animating. This was just like in the entertainment industry. Okay, so it was like 6 years and it was like every day. I was doing animation every day. So it did not have to take that long. If I had something like KennyRoy.com, especially the Anim Gym in the forums, where it's like being in a class and you can just look at the person on your left and your right and just see what they're doing, it'd be fantastic. So take advantage of it. Really do. All right? Cool. That's a great question. I'd love to see more questions. This is the address to send them to. Please send them all. You don't have to hold on to all your questions for March Madness. You can send them one at a time. I'm keeping track of them. I won't lose your entries. Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more, a hell of a lot more. Okay. Let's do it. Let's finish strong. Good luck with your animation. And as always, rock on.